All right, preparing to live stream. Got it. And then I have to send you the link.
I can, it lets me copy the streaming link.
Okay.
So I have it.
You got it. Yeah, it's live.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that was easy. Yeah, yeah, everything is together. The last 3 times that I practiced, I was right around like 55 minutes and like 20 seconds, or 55 minutes and like 50 seconds. So like right around the 55.
Oh, sorry, yeah, the YouTube is it lags behind, if you notice.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah, it's just like you're talking now.
Yeah, see.
It lags behind by like almost 30 seconds.
Wow, I wonder why the lag is so bad.
Do you want me to change it to the Purdue account? Maybe it's because it's a Gmail account.
I doubt it.
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think it'll matter.
Yeah, I think people are coming in. I'm going to admit them. Nielsen is here. Everyone is here. So I'm just going to. I have to take out the security setting here.
Oh, hi, Prof.
Hey. Yeah, it's Terrell's defense.
Yeah, it's in half an hour, right?
Yeah. I sent you a note saying that I have to fix for him. So we moved your meeting for tomorrow at 3.
Okay. So tomorrow I might have the TA for ME44, so I won't be there.
Okay, then in that case we can move it to 4. How long does your TA go?
It's from like the whole afternoon.
Oh, it's okay because Friday I'll be traveling, so we'll miss you tomorrow, but I can have others.
Yeah, and I guess we don't have much to update basically this week.
Yeah, I know. So we are merging the 2 teams together, so that'll be good. That's fine.
All right.
We are merging the other modular haptic team with your team, which also is going to be merging AR with some of those more serious applications. You guys are working on more non-serious applications. Yeah, so thanks, Nielsen, for coming. Just make sure you, I sent you a note by email.
Yeah, I'm reading. I'm reading it now. Thank you, Karthik.
Okay. I'll just message you separately. Thanks. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so see you in half an hour, Prof.
Yeah, all right, see you.
Yeah, and then we can wait until 2:30 to admit everybody into the in if you want.
Yeah. So Nielsen, it starts only at 2:30, so we are good.
Oh,
don't
really?
worry about it. But
I thought it was at 2.
You can it's at 2:30. But okay. Yeah, basically you can either stay mute and or come back again. Either way is good.
I'll see you at 2:30.
No problem. The reason is he wanted the live YouTube to go out. I wanted to make sure, like, we had to do a lot of fixing yesterday to get it all right. I just wanted to make sure that YouTube transmission is going from Zoom. So now I know how to do it.
Okay. All right.
Luckily,
I don't know how I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I'll see you at 2:30.
Don't worry. Yeah, we'll see you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, so like Olivia and Dr. Gatson, you can put them back in the waiting room, and
I'll put them in the waiting room. Okay. Just let them know that they are going to be in the waiting room. So the waiting room. I think you can't put people, maybe you can, when the enable waiting room is not open, right?
Yeah, you have the waiting room, I think, has to be enabled first.
Yeah, I enabled it, but it still allowed me to put them there, which is kind of interesting. So, well, now everybody will be in the waiting room, and I will admit them. Well, right now I can just mute everything and just admit them, I guess.
It's up to you. It's up to you how you want to do it. It's not a big deal.
Well, either way, I mean, basically, I'll ask you to press for like 50 minutes or so, and then open Q&A, and then we'll have a committee Q&A, and then we'll just have a committee short meeting with you towards the end. That's how we will progress. All right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No worries.
I'll just let people in the waiting room in. That way there's nobody who is not getting in, okay? Hi, Terrell, I did look at, you made the Nordkai submission, Nordikai. Let's kind of look at it to make sure that it is going into something decent. I wouldn't even be, I mean, I'm actually okay sending it to CSCW, even if they, you know, then like if it gets out of it, then we can send it to Nordikai next year or DIS next year. I'm okay either way, because I don't want to like undersell it, right? It's way ahead of Nordikai in my opinion. Well, we'll discuss that. But anyway, I think it's okay to just keep it there. You can just withdraw it in a couple of weeks or so.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, basically, I'm
yeah,
saying like
I only made the submission. I only did that because the
okay.
deadline.
I got it.
for the
I got it. I got it.
So,
Yeah, I think like basically like between your journal paper and the Kai and the other one, like we should be good. And this one we can take a risk on it. You know, I'm okay taking a risk on one more. It's not a big deal because you'll have your basic minimum satisfied anyway. So
yeah.
so if they kill it, then we can worry about it the next run. So but Nordica may be a little like not at the level that you're at all, especially that this paper was a close accepted CSCW, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's fine. Yeah, like I said, I only did that just
Okay.
just
I got
because
it.
I wanted to make sure
I
that
got it. I got it.
in case. Yeah.
I got it. Sounds good,
That's
man.
the only reason.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, just doing a quick sound check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we are good. Hi, Tahira. So I'm just waiting for Alex and Nielsen. Nielsen was here a while ago. He's here again.
I'm here.
Alex is also
Yep.
here. Oh, great. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Let's
Yes,
get
I'm here
going.
too.
All right, fantastic. And Carol is here, I'm assuming. So with Zoom. So anyway, let me get going. So yeah, thanks for the committee members, especially Alex, Tahira, Nielsen, for spending time at Terrell, in some cases co-authoring and helping him through the PhD course that he has come to. Terrell basically joined us after BS in physics in Morehouse College in Atlanta, 2016. I still remember him visiting our lab and all the toy stuff we were doing, and the makerspace goals that we already had going was very well aligned. So after joining us, he continued doing a lot of other things besides his core focus on thesis, which includes on the Jerry program for the 7th and 8th grades, as well as 9th through 11. So he pretty much built that, rebuilt that part of the program for the labs, and also additional workshops with STEAM at Indianapolis, underrepresented minorities, as well as several other things. So he's also an NSF fellow, GEM fellow, and the George Washington Carver fellow. So it's been pretty successful in the past. So he's up for defense now. So we have we have a live YouTube transmission, just to let everyone know. So there are other people watching it besides visitors here. So also wanted to welcome his parents, Kevin and Teresa. So thanks for coming. So Terrell, why don't you do your presentation, 50 minutes or so. After that, we'll have open questions of everyone. And then we'll have the questions from the committee, and then the committee will just meet with you alone for several minutes after that. So that's going to be the process we'll use. So go ahead and you can start. I'm going to be recording your presentation. Thanks.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so I want to make sure I turn on the transcription as well. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrell Glenn. I'm a doctoral candidate in mechanical engineering at Purdue University. And today I'm going to be presenting to you the results of the work that I've done to complete my PhD. I'd like to remind everyone to please keep your microphones muted throughout the presentation. I'm going to take about 55 minutes to complete my presentation. Then I'll open the floor for questions and answers from the audience. And then once the Q&A is complete, everyone will then be asked to leave while my committee discusses the results. So without further ado, I'm going to begin my presentation. First, I'd like to acknowledge my major advisor, Dr. Karthik Ramani. Also, thank you to my committee members, Dr. Tahira Reed-Smith, Dr. Nielsen Perdita, and Dr. Alex Quinn. Thank you to all my collaborators and co-authors. Thank you to the past and present members of the Convergence Design Lab. Thank you to the Donald W. St. Feddersen Distinguished Chair Professorship for funding my research. And finally, thank you to the National Science Foundation, DRFP, the National GEM Consortium, and the George Washington Carver Fellowship Program for funding my degree. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my beautiful partner, Dr. Sierra Milton, and our new puppy, Reese, for helping me and supporting me throughout this very arduous process. Also, thank you to my mom, Teresa Glenn, and my dad, Kevin Glenn. Thank you for your faith, confidence, and endless wisdom that you've instilled in me. To my older brother, Kevin, thank you for all the fun and the love you've shown me during my time in Indiana, and your love and support throughout my life. And thank you to my youngest brother, Tevin, for being the fire in my belly and being the beacon of light in my eyes to allow me to achieve my dreams. You all mean the world to me. So the outline of my presentation is shown here. First, I'm going to discuss some key terminology and provide a brief background for the work, as well as our motivation for pursuing this work, and then some related works, and our key contributions. Then I'm going to cover the 3 phases of my research for my preliminary defense, which were AR IoT storytelling for youth with StoryMaker, live programming electromechanical devices for youth with IoT Maker, and shared AR IoT co-located experiences with Shared IoT. Then I'll discuss my research on the play and design of customizable AR IoT cards for children with microcards. And finally, I'll present my conclusions for the research and some future work. First, human-computer interaction can be looked at as many things. Some have argued that the field should be looked at as human-computer integration, as we aim to integrate computers and computing devices into our lives. The advent of smart devices puts computers into speakers, TVs, watches, and many other everyday devices, transforming the interfaces and how they interact with them. For the purposes of my research, I define it as a study of how humans can use computers and computing devices to make their lives easier. Augmented reality, or AR for short, is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information, sometimes across multiple senses, like visual, auditory, haptic, and even olfactory. AR can even be shared across multiple devices, which I have explored in my research. For this thesis, I'm going to focus on visual, auditory, and haptic feedback with virtual content. The Internet of Things, or IoT for short, is a transformation process of connecting our smart devices and objects to a network to perform efficiently, access remotely, and collect information. And finally, physical prototyping is a core aspect of my research because we allow our users to create their own IoT devices using low-fidelity materials such as cardboard, wood, acrylic, and even some 3D printed and laser cut parts. There are many systems that utilize physical prototyping, AR, and IoT in their systems individually, but very few integrate them all into a single seamless experience. This is the main motivation for us to pursue this work. My research sits at the intersection of several complementary technologies and effectively integrates what is powerful about each of the ideas that it draws from, all while keeping the human at the center. So prior work in the areas of physical prototyping and electronic construction kits have shown to help children learn and grow as a result of their youth. The physical and electronics kits given by prior works like Makerware allow children to generate their own wearables by connecting these pentagonal-shaped electronics to sleeves, shirts, gloves, hats, and many other clothing items. Prior work from our own lab, like HandyMake, affords young students the opportunity to create engaging and customizable devices for play and practical uses out of low-fidelity materials. Users use a glove equipped with sensors, gyroscopes, and more to animate their creations. LEGO Mindstorms is one of many commercially available kits that give users several robot designs to choose from as a baseline, but also gives users the ability to create their own electromechanical designs. Users can even further control their designs using computer programming. And finally, the Hummingbird kit from BirdBrain Technologies gives users access to a microbit microcontroller and a set of plug-and-play electronics modules for use by children to fabricate their own unique devices. Augmented reality technology is unique because of its blend of physical and virtual content. Prior work like Motion Beam and Hideout help bridge that gap by creating scenarios where users can have their virtual characters interact with certain physical objects. While enabling interactions between both physical objects and virtual characters, its limitations do include not being robust enough to allow the user to generate their own AR characters nor fabricate their own physical objects. AR solutions like Proto AR allow users to generate low-fidelity prototypes of screens and AR overlays from paper sketches and quasi 3D content from 360-degree captures of clay models. One very popular commercial application of AR is Pokemon Go, which launched back in 2016 and is still a hit today. Using the app, players point their phone cameras at real-world objects and can place their Pokemon partners in the real world, have them battle, and even play with them. Recently, Pokemon Go enabled players to have shared AR experiences, allowing multiple players to sync their AR content across several mobile devices to view and interact with their Pokemon. Given these prior works, there exists a very unique gap between augmented reality, physical prototyping, and the Internet of Things. My aim was to design an interactive system with which we can, 1, explore novel interactions between physical and virtual content, 2, lower the barrier to entry for young makers to design, build, and play with DIY electromechanical devices. And 3, engage and collaborate with one another, both virtually and physically, in an AR IoT environment. To fulfill these aims, I sought to answer the following research questions. What are the design criteria for an AR IoT system that enables users to create unique interactions between virtual content and physical hardware? What would young novice users do with such a system? And what could young novice users learn with such a system? So in phase 1, I present StoryMaker. This work was published in the ACM Chi 2020 conference on human factors in computing. So I want you all to close your eyes and imagine yourself as the main character in a story. Let's say you're storming the castle in order to save the princess, but instead of stone, the castle is actually made entirely of cardboard. And the drawbridge on the front of the castle is actually controlled by motors. And the lights on the front are actually just LEDs. And since you're the main character, you have to be in the story too. Well, how would all of this work? Well, I'm going to tell you how. The system comprises 3 applications. The first is Device Maker, which is a block programming environment that allows users to generate syntactically correct code for their custom IoT devices by plugging blocks together on the screen. Next is Event Maker, which is a phone application that helps users design the interactions between their physical devices and their AR content. And finally is StoryMaker, which enacts those virtual physical interactions. So how does StoryMaker separate itself from prior works? StoryMaker gives users the ability to design and build their own electromechanical devices with our plug-and-play electronics toolkit and our block programming environment. StoryMaker also serves as a design space for users to design the interactions between their virtual and physical content. And finally, StoryMaker makes it easy for users in our target age group to iterate through the design, build, play cycle by reducing the barrier of entry to these areas. In order to gather and curate our design criteria for StoryMaker, we conducted 3 storytelling challenges with students in our target age group. Students were required to collaboratively write a story, design and build characters, props, and other objects, and then present their story to the rest of the teams. In total, we had about 53 students participate in this study. Participants crafted items with recyclable and reusable materials like cardboard, plastic bottles, and aluminum cans. These items were embedded with electronics and used to animate their stories. From the results of these studies, we were able to formulate our initial design goals, which are accessible. Previous toolkits use high fidelity materials and are costly. In contrast, we put an emphasis on mixing input and output devices with low fidelity materials to increase accessibility. Engagement. StoryMaker should engage the user throughout the design, build, play cycle by encouraging them to explore new configurations when they finish with older versions. Expressive. StoryMaker gives users control over their storytelling experience by altering the existing physical content or by creating their own. Plug and play. Users should have electronics that are ready for play with minimal configuration. And low floors, wide walls, high ceilings. StoryMaker should be accessible to students of various skill sets by eliminating the need for prior electronics and programming knowledge. Based on our design goals, we developed a plug-and-play PCB that we call the Maker Board. We designed the Maker Board to be plug and play because users should not be required to undergo a significant amount of training in order to connect their electronics to it. The electronics library in this phase consists of the Maker Board on the left side of the screen and the 7 electronics modules that you see on screen. The Maker Board incorporates a Wi-Fi capable microcontroller called the Adafruit Huzzah 32 Feather and several input and output ports to help provide a modular and connected experience. We have made additions to the electronics library, which we'll cover in subsequent phases. The first application in our system is called Device Maker. Device Maker is a graphical programming language that allows the user to plug code blocks, operators, and values in various combinations and then output syntactically correct code in the Arduino programming language. Device Maker uses common Arduino commands such as digital write and digital read, while allowing users to also choose from a list of our own built-in commands for any of their electrical components in our electronics library. In this example, our user is creating a plain device. Users create functions for each of their devices first and name them accordingly. Here, our user has created two functions called idle and taxi. Device Maker automatically generates a separate file that contains information for each device and function that the user has created. These functions can be utilized later on when creating their events and their interactions with Event Maker. But for now, the users will simply create their functions and save their code. As stated before, Device Maker outputs syntactically correct code in the Arduino programming language. Each device is programmed individually in Device Maker, compiled, and then uploaded to the MakerBoard via an over-the-air server. The next application in our system is called Event Maker, which is an event planning app that allows the user to design the interactions that happen between their virtual characters and physical devices. Each event has an event name describing what is happening in the event, and a subject, which is the character or device that the user controls. Users can choose between any of our 4 characters or from a list of devices. If a virtual character is chosen, users can select an animation for the character to perform during the interaction. If a physical device is chosen, the list of functions that they programmed will be available for them to select. As the illustration shows, the plain device that our user created can be selected from either the subject or the target fields, and then the corresponding functions are then selectable from the drop-down menu. Next is the target, which is the character or device that performs an action when the subject interacts with it. Users can choose between the virtual characters or physical devices for these interactions. And finally is the user interface, which gives the user control over the subject during that particular event. The last application in the list is StoryMaker, which is the namesake of the project. StoryMaker is a cell phone app that was built using the Unity 3D game engine. As you can see, StoryMaker gives users the option for a default story, which only contains pre-made devices and characters and events, or a custom story, which they create. StoryMaker wirelessly pairs to electronic devices and creates virtual tags for each physical device. StoryMaker uses a plane detection algorithm from Google's AR Core to create a map of the room, which then allows users to tag their physical devices, place their virtual characters, and create the interactions between the virtual and physical content. We studied StoryMaker across 2 user studies. For user study number 1, participants were gathered from a summer camp that is held at Purdue. In total, we had about 14 students participate in study 1. The workshop lasted 3 hours and included a pre-study survey, an introduction to the StoryMaker Structure Toolkit, the electronics library, and the StoryMaker app. During the final half of the workshop, participants narrated their stories to the group, and then the video feed from the phones were broadcast to a large screen. During user study 2, participants were gathered from high schools local to the Lafayette, West Lafayette, and Greater Indianapolis communities. In total, we had about 19 students participate in study 2. Again, the study lasted approximately 3 hours, starting with a pre-study survey, followed by use of all 3 of our applications, and a post-study survey. Participants were given a myriad of materials to create their own devices, including cardboard, paint, yarn, feathers, plastic bottles, tape, and more. After students designed their own devices, they programmed them with Device Maker, generated their own events with Event Maker, and then brought their stories to life with StoryMaker. Participants were able to design their own fully functioning electromechanical devices during our 3-hour study, all of which you can see on the screen. Overall, students enjoyed using the system and were able to create a wide range of stories, devices, and experiences with the system as well as each other. As we expected, groups with a larger number of students were afforded more time because they were able to divvy up the work amongst them. This resulted in a greater number of physical devices, more events, or both. The engagement and collaboration between group members was most notable and appreciated. Some group members worked on separate tasks, but they were engaged in dialogue throughout. Another notable aspect is that students were inclined to pass the phone to one another while narrating their stories. Other groups stayed together and worked on each part as a unit. However, the smaller groups that did this were not able to complete all of the tasks within the 3-hour time period of the study. Moreover, students were able to utilize our system as a design space for AR IoT interactions. Thus, we made the following contributions with StoryMaker. Design rationale extracted from preliminary studies that show how children engage in maker-based storytelling, what they make, and the issues that arise as a result. The StoryMaker system, which includes plug-and-play electronics, an AR-enabled app that helps users create dynamic storytelling environments, as well as 2 accompanying applications, Device Maker and Event Maker, with all of which allow users to program their own customized devices and design the interactions between virtual and physical content. And finally, the study and evaluation results of our system, which show that it can be used to easily create new and unique storytelling experiences. Some limitations with the StoryMaker system were as follows. First, our students had issues translating their generated block code with Device Maker to the motions that their physical devices would eventually enact. It was only after uploading the code to the Maker board that they were able to see the programs implemented, which oftentimes would require rewriting, recompiling, and re-uploading code. Second, each student wanted to see their written stories through an AR lens, prompting them to pass the phone around to each other. This would result in occlusion of the camera when their hands and fingers will cover the camera, causing the phone to lose its tracking. We addressed these issues in the subsequent phases by first expanding and enhancing our electronics library to have more electronics to use for new electromechanical devices, upgrading Device Maker to include a live programming simulator where users can see their code being executed on screen, and enabling multiplayer capabilities for a collaborative AR experience. So in phase 2, I present IoT Maker. This work is under review in the International Journal on Child-Computer Interaction. Scratch, which is designed to enhance technological fluency among youth, allowed users to manipulate media on the screen by dragging and dropping blocks of code on the left, which then get executed on the right. Block programming was a hit because it provided almost instantaneous feedback for students to try new things in a relatively short period of time. While this is a very robust platform, Scratch began as a purely digital platform, only expanding to the physical domain recently. Moving on, researchers played around with this concept of block programming by bringing it to physical computing. By plugging in a regular Arduino Uno, users can program their devices and watch their code execute in real time on the physical device. While it's true that the feedback received from ModKit gives users the ability to program with ease, configuring electrical circuits can still pose a problem for users without prior electronics experience. Finally, programs like Microsoft's online MakeCode platform for Microbit gives its users the ability to program physical devices on the left while also showing the proper wiring diagrams for those devices. This makes it easier for novices in both computer science and electronics to use the system and create a wide range of programs. Programming today involves editing code while also running it in our heads. To augment this mental simulation, live programming promises for much more fluid feedback between the programmer and the program that is being executed while it is being edited. For this research project, we studied how kids can use live programming to program electromechanical IoT devices. As you can see with traditional approaches, wiring diagrams can quickly become messy and confusing. Connections to sensors like this one aren't visible and not all of them are interactable, meaning that I cannot see the wiring diagram for these external sensors, nor can I simulate them on screen. The moral of the story is that live programming is very popular in physical computing, but there is a clear need for more work to be done. IoT Maker lets users generate code for their IoT devices using our block-based programming environment. They can watch their code being executed on the right side of the screen after programming it on the left. Users can upload their code to the maker board, and the custom function names are then read by the mobile app. Using the mobile app, users can connect to and activate their custom functions on the maker board. The inclusion of a live simulator allows users to get an idea of what their code outputs will be, as well as allows for quick adjustments that would otherwise require complete recompilation of code. It also increases the accessibility of hardware programming, since users do not need to own or be near their own hardware to see what their functions can do. Our simulator is inspired by Microsoft's microbit ecosystem, which I showed you before, where users can test simple circuits and electrical components. However, notice that the wiring diagram on the right side of IoT Maker, which contains a myriad of electrical components, yet has fewer wires, makes it much easier to configure the electrical components. So this is the current version of our electronics library. We modified the maker board to be compatible with more sensors and higher level electrical components like the LED matrices and the NeoPixel lights at the bottom, all of which are common off-the-shelf components from electronic suppliers. We also redesigned the maker board, placing the input and output ports in straight lines on the top, while the non-interactable electrical components, such as the MCU, the power regulators, and resistors, were placed on the rear side of the maker board. IoT Maker subsystems are all designed with ease of use in mind as a major design priority. Upon startup, the app allows users to choose the functions generated by the user when programming with IoT Maker. To supply the user with different possible methods to control their devices, the app presents 4 different ways in which they can control their custom functions: action, slider, directional pad, and toggle. The action option provides a button that runs the function upon button press, while the toggle option allows the user to select the function that is called when the button is toggled on, and the function that activates when it is toggled off. The slider option presents an interactable slider, which sends values between 0 and 180 to the maker board, which enables the user to control servo motors with variable input. And the directional pad allows the user to assign functions to the 4 directional buttons. This is particularly useful when the user creates a multifunction device such as a car. So, how does IoT Maker separate itself from other platforms? IoT Maker offers a plug-and-play electronics toolkit and even more input and output devices in the electronics library. It offers simplified wiring diagrams to help students build circuits quickly and use higher-level electronics, and an IoT platform that allows users to control their devices wirelessly with a cell phone or a laptop computer. At the completion of IoT Maker, we sought 4 mechatronics engineers with expertise in designing and building electromechanical devices. Additionally, 2 of our experts had experience teaching students to design and build smart toys and robots in conjunction with our collaborators in the College of Education during the Gifted Education Research and Resource Institute summer workshops. We aim to answer 2 important research questions through this study. What further design considerations do we need to ensure that IoT Maker has a high ceiling for learning, but also a low floor for students in our target age group? And in what ways can live programming help with the design of an electromechanical IoT device? We developed coding challenges for each of our experts to complete. In the table, you'll see a short description of the coding challenges and a comparison between the number of components needed for IoT Maker versus Arduino, which is a widely used physical computing device. As you can see, Arduino requires many more components than IoT Maker to complete this simple challenge. Here's a visual representation of the IoT Maker circuit versus the Arduino circuit. Participants were given an instructions manual to help them through coding challenges 1 through 4. And here's coding challenge 2, where we asked the participants to turn the NeoPixel blue when the light sensor senses darkness. Here's the coding challenge 3, where we asked participants to change the color of the NeoPixel when the RGB sensor senses something red. Here's coding challenge 4, where participants had to use a for loop to rotate 2 servos from 0 degrees to 180 degrees. All the experts completed this coding challenge, but we decided to make it optional for the youth because none of the experts used for loops, nor did they use servo motors in their final coding challenge, which brings us to coding challenge number 5. For this coding challenge, we provided the students with a pre-built car and these code blocks to get them started. This coding challenge was open-ended, so students could use any of the electronics in our library. We require each participant to use at least 2 extra components in the library for their car. Overall, the experts thought IoT Maker was a useful aid in electromechanical design and programming, especially for novices. With our feedback from the experts, we then began our youth studies. We conducted a field study with 15 youth in our target age range of 11 to 18 years old. Originally, we wanted to test IoT Maker with an older demographic of 14 to 18-year-olds, but we expanded it due to enthusiasm from parents to have their younger students participate. This prompted us to study the differences between the young and older students. However, there were no noticeable differences that we observed by age in the study outcomes, as students were recruited due to their novice understanding of the domain at baseline. Thus, we determined that it was suitable to combine our samples of 11 to 18-year-olds in the study. And so the gift that you're seeing on the screen is one of our youth users who's playing with her car after completing coding challenge number 5. And this GIF is of another one of our youth users playing with her car after completing coding challenge 5. Our results indicate that 1, IoT Maker is a great tool to help novices learn how to manipulate and navigate electronics and IoT devices. 2, that it reduces the time to complete activities while also offering time to improve upon iterations. And 3, it significantly reduces the barrier to entry for novice users. From these youth studies, we found that IoT Maker is attractive and usable to young people who are interested in learning how to program physical computing devices. The Maker board seemed to make programming their physical computing devices easier and more enjoyable, which is in line with some of our previous studies that we had. And finally, live programming is a great tool to assist novices with creating complex devices that will require more skill than they otherwise would possess, thus lowering the barrier of entry and providing a higher entry point to this level of physical computing. Thus, we offer these contributions with IoT Maker. The design rationale for a system that allows novice users to prototype electromechanical IoT devices, which were extracted from a survey of existing live programming tools and evaluated by 4 experts in physical computing devices, electronics, and physical prototyping in order to establish external validity. The IoT Maker system itself, which provides users with a plug-and-play electronics kit, a block programming environment, a live programming simulation tool, and a companion app to control electromechanical devices via Wi-Fi. And lastly, the results from a study conducted on 15 youth aged 11 to 18, which shows that our users were able to create more complex electromechanical devices than they otherwise would have without our system. While our system mainly covers various aspects of programming and electronics, the angle of mechanical design is underexplored. In future work, we can look at adding a library of previously developed 3D printed connectors that may give a bit more flexibility to students when designing devices with mechanical motion. In the next phase of my research, we sought to return to AR IoT interactions by using IoT Maker and combining it with our previous StoryMaker platform. The advent of shared AR experiences by having multiple users view AR content on their individual devices was intriguing. We want to extend the platform beyond just storytelling by introducing shared IoT. And so in phase 3, we explored shared IoT, and this work is going to be submitted to the ACM conference on computer-supported collaborative work in July. Shared AR experiences have become a popular research topic as our technological advances propel us further away from social activities. Prior works like Collab AR investigate how co-located groups can use augmented reality to complete tasks and foster collaboration among multiple people. Industries have even begun implementing shared AR experiences in their products. Google's AR Core allows multiple users to create a shared AR experience that lets users add virtual objects to an AR scene. Multiple users can then view and interact with these objects simultaneously from different positions in a shared physical space. Shared IoT is based off of this. Let me explain how it works. First, the host phone scans a cloud anchor. Second, the client phone scans the cloud anchor, and both participants can view the AR content from their own perspectives. Multiple users can share AR experiences like in Pokemon Go. The problem here is that AR apps today typically only give you the AR experience and offer limited interaction, if any at all, with the physical environment, which is the case with Pokemon Go here. The shared IoT system comprises 3 parts. Using our electronics library and IoT maker, users can design and program their own electromechanical devices in the same way as in phases 1 and 2. The functions that users program are compiled and uploaded to the maker board and simultaneously sent to the Event Maker app. Users program their interactions using the interface on the right before moving on to the shared IoT app. The events are read by shared IoT, and users are allowed to start their multiplayer AR experience. We achieve our multiplayer capabilities by using Photon, which is a free engine that gives developers access to cross-platform servers that synchronize and share information through the cloud. Users have the option to create their own room for users to join, or to join a pre-existing room that someone else has created. You could think of it as an online video game match where multiple people can play the same game together. But for us, these rooms enable the transfer of AR and IoT data between connected phones that are inside of any one room. And for perspective, this is what the shared AR content looks like from multiple viewpoints. So, how does shared IoT distinguish itself from other works? Well, shared IoT enables multiple users to simultaneously create interactions between AR content and IoT devices. And shared IoT also lowers the barrier of entry to areas like electromechanical design, electronics, and the creation of shared AR IoT content. To gain more insight into how people could use the shared IoT platform to create unique shared AR IoT experiences, we conducted 6 two-hour workshops with 13 undergraduate and graduate students at Purdue between the ages of 18 and 34. We implemented a golfing exercise to showcase the flexibility of our system among various use cases. Upon arrival to the research area, users were taken through a tutorial of the Event Maker app first, and then the shared IoT app second. Pre-made IoT devices were given to them to use during the tutorial. This was done intentionally to give them a good understanding of how the AR connects to the IoT devices and how to design their interactions. We also wanted to give them an idea as to how the golfing would work, so we had them do just 1 round of golf with our devices before putting the phones down. Next, they were introduced to the IoT Maker application and explained the task of the user study, which was to work together during a build session to design an IoT device that would serve as an obstacle for the mini golf course. Each device was required to utilize at least 2 external electronics, but any of the devices that we made could also be chosen. For this task, users were given several prototyping materials to use for their devices, including cardboard, paint, feathers, popsicle sticks, hot glue, tape, plastic straws, and much more. Approximately 1 hour was allotted to having participants brainstorm, build, and program their obstacles. So here's a short clip of what golfing with shared IoT is like. As you can see, when the dragon walks up to the windmill, it begins to spin faster, making it harder for opponents to make a hole-in-one. Overall, our participants found that the system was usable by them and the different parts of the system were well integrated. In the post-study survey, we asked questions from the System Usability Scale, or SUS for short. The SUS scores are presented by participant in this figure. The participants gave us a strong total SUS score of 77.5. The SUS states that a score of 68 or below is deemed unusable. Our score shows that the system can be used to design and program IoT devices that are controlled by multiple users for shared AR IoT experiences. We found that the maker board was helpful in lowering the barrier of entry for all participants to create electromechanical devices. We also found that the shared IoT platform integrated the different areas very well to help our users create their own AR IoT interactions. The Event Maker app overall does need improvement to help users design the interactions between the physical and virtual content. It also provides a good platform to allow for a unique golfing exercise. And further, the IoT Maker system excelled at helping users easily and quickly program those devices with its block programming interface and its live simulation tool. So with Shared IoT, we contributed a unique design space for shared AR IoT experiences among multiple users. The design of this system was motivated by the need to make shared AR content interactive with physical devices, as well as technologies that make AR collaboration easier and more engaging. Our system encourages users to design, build, and program physical IoT devices and author AR content for a shared AR IoT experience. We offer two main contributions with Shared IoT: an AR IoT system that enables users to design and program IoT devices to be used and controlled among multiple users for a shared AR IoT experience. And two, a user study exploring the usability of Shared IoT and how useful AR IoT interactions are outside of storytelling. We found that the AR characters and virtual physical interactions that are enabled with this research are well suited for storytelling and some other use cases, but our implementation of such interactions may not be the best for all situations. Holding a cell phone in the hand during play led to various issues like occlusion, loss of tracking, and in some cases, completely restarting the app. However, digital physical interactions are novel and can prove to be very useful if implemented properly through cell phone AR, which we explored in the next phase. So in the next phase of my research, we further explored AR IoT interactions by introducing microcarts. By placing an AR-enabled cell phone camera onto a user-built IoT car, we enabled a group of children to explore physical computing and AR IoT interactions through shared AR IoT experiences. So phase 4 presents microcarts, and I plan to submit this work in the fall to the ACM Chi 2023 conference on human factors in computing. Companies like Nintendo have already been pushing the boundaries of what AR can be and what it can do. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit gives users the ability to drive a real Mario or Luigi kart with a camera attached to it. The camera sends the video feed to the Nintendo Switch where the AR content is rendered for the user to see. While playing, you can launch virtual shells, bananas, and other reminiscent Mario Kart items at other characters and other players to stop their carts and win the race. To understand the affordances and the limitations of this technology, we acquired 2 Mario kits to study and play with, which helped us motivate our design and further understand the user experiences. After using this system, we devised a plan to enhance creative play by incorporating our electronics, computer programming with IoT Maker, and enabling users to design AR IoT interactions. So after using the Mario Kart system, we decided to make the following modifications to our existing platform. One of the biggest issues reported to us by participants in our studies from StoryMaker and from Shared IoT were that the process to get from programming to play was entirely too long. The event creation app that we developed, Event Maker, was simply not very intuitive to use. Our participants conveyed to us that a lot of forethought was needed from them to create their interactions with it. Our team decided to change the way that we allow users to author their interactions by integrating this feature into the IoT Maker application. Thus, we added an augmented reality folder to the list of blocks for users to choose from. By adding simple conditional logic, users can program their devices to respond to AR IoT interactions. In this example, the user is programming their LED matrix to show a smile if it gets hit with an AR dart. We hypothesized that adding the AR IoT authoring to the block programming interface would help make the authoring process more streamlined. After programming, users compile and upload the code to their maker board. And the microcards button here is used to connect the phone to the computer, but I'll give more details about this in just a few slides. Overall, we made slight modifications to the maker board and utilized only a subset of the electronics in our full electronics toolkit. The subset was curated from the electronics that participants actually used in our IoT maker studies from phase 2. The main modification to note here is the claw that is actuated by the small servo, which we designed and implemented after removing the servo completely from the IoT maker study because of its lack of use. Next, we modified the chassis to add mounts for the phone and the servo claw, which increased the size and allowed participants to attach more electronics to it. After users log into the system, they can choose to test their code using the IoT Maker controller. Here, the user is testing their open claw and closed claw functions to make sure that they all work properly. Once users are ready to fully play with their microcart, they can simply scan the QR code on the computer with their cell phone, and the two will automatically pair to one another. Users can activate the functions that they programmed with Cart Creator using the keys on the computer. The up, down, left, and right keys on the computer make the microcart move in those directions. Number keys on the computer are used to activate the corresponding functions. The plus and minus keys change the speed of the microcarts during play, and the space bar shoots an AR dart at opponents to stop their microcart and activate the function that they programmed the cart to perform. Once the system was designed, we sought to test it with a group of youth. Overall, we had 22 participants across 7 workshops. Each workshop lasted approximately 2 hours, and participants' ages ranged from 9 to 15 years old. Students were divvied up into groups of 2 to 3, as you can see in the chart on the right. And participants' names in this chart are presented as pseudonyms in order to protect the identity of the youth. So we used a mixture of interview data and observational data to evaluate the system and answer our research questions for this study, which were, how can microcarts serve as a design space for youth to create dynamic AR IoT environments? And how can future systems that allow youth to author AR IoT interactions be designed? Our initial analysis of the qualitative data was to identify a set of codes with which we could derive some common themes. The themes were developed deductively, and the analysis team met virtually via Zoom to begin developing these codes. We used the bottom-up qualitative coding approach to examine the interview transcripts and the observational forms, while keeping our design goals in mind. Our final set of codes are as follows: exploratory, inquisitive, curious, making connections to prior observations and experiences, creativity, problem solving, and participants' interpretation of their own learning. After our codes were developed, the analysis team split the data by participant, and we individually analyzed the data based on our codes. Any data that did not fit the codes was used to determine the limitations and some future work for the system. After the data was coded, we reconvened via Zoom to discuss the findings and develop a set of themes, which are as follows. The microcart system piqued the curiosity of the children because of the electronics toolkit. We found that every child enjoyed using the electronics that invoked one or more of their senses. We noted on our observational study forms how many times students were verbally or physically enthusiastic about using the electronics throughout the study. Every single participant exhibited this behavior at least once, while 11 participants showed the behavior 5 or more times in a single session. The familiarity of microcarts to commercial products that kids use both in school and in extracurricular activities is a strength of the system. 20 participants had at least some experience with block-based programming, so they were able to leverage some prior knowledge that they had while using IoT Maker. Additionally, 11 participants stated that they were at least a little familiar with the Mario Kart Live home circuit video game, but only 3 participants stated that they had experience using AR apps in the past. We believe that this discrepancy in reporting is due to the children's lack of understanding of the technology, though. However, microcart's AR IoT interactions were new and exciting to the children, as 19 of them cited these interactions as what they liked most about the system in their post-study interviews. Collaboration is a major aspect of the impact that the system can have on children. Although we put the participants in groups during the study, very few of the participants were collaborating with each other while completing the first 4 coding challenges. However, during the final open-ended challenge, participants began gathering ideas from one another and even helping when they were having issues, which also was an observation that we noted during the IoT Maker and our shared IoT studies. And for the final theme, participants were observed performing several iterations of their final programs before playing during the last activity. The 3 participants in group 5 each wanted to go back and change their final programs after uploading their code for the final activity, all because they wanted to improve it by adding more devices. They had this idea with approximately 15 minutes left in the study, and each of them were able to iterate, upload, test, and begin playing again with each other before the end of the study. In other words, the participants had garnered enough prowess with microcards during the study to iterate on their code and play with each other even after finishing all the activities. Moreover, we deduced that opportunities for children to iterate quickly can help them hit conceptual milestones and continue being engaged with the technology that they are faced with. So in their post-study interviews, 4 students conveyed their thoughts on how easy it was to create their microcards. But Blaine went as far as to say this, which indicates to us that the children really enjoyed the openness and the ease of microcards. Elena mentioned in their post-study interview that they have experience using JavaScript and how they use it to make websites. Notably though, they conveyed to us that they felt that seeing the JavaScript code that was responsible for executing the code on the simulator helped them make connections to previous programming experiences that they have had. Molly, who was in the group with Samantha, overheard a conversation about how we designed the entire system and noticeably began playing around with the features of the system, such as laboratory mode on the Maker board, the mobile app, and IoT Maker simulator. At the conclusion of the workshop, Molly asked one of the observers what their job title was at the university and explained to them that that she wanted to do what he was doing when she goes to college. Finally, even parents were enthusiastic about microcards captivating their children. The mother of Rodney and Billy was present for their post-study interviews, during which she stated this quote: "Based on this mother's response, Rodney had not responded to the other kids that he had been exposed to in the same way that he had responded to microcards, especially when using the electronics." Our results show that the children were able to create their own AR IoT experiences with microcards. The study also gave us insight for several recommendations that we have for future systems. Exposing students to engineering at an early age is important, but disclosing every detail about it is not as helpful. We propose reducing user development time by reducing the knowledge barrier of entry. AR IoT systems should be hands-on, but they should also enable collaborative play between multiple users. We also propose a block programming approach to authoring AR IoT interactions to centralize the programming of all IoT functionality, while encouraging more iterations of the AR IoT interactions. Finally, a connection system is important to help children connect the electronics to the chassis of the microcard or any other IoT device that future systems may use. With microcards, we designed a system that supports children in designing new, creative experiences with AR IoT interactions. And we also offer 3 main contributions with microcards. The microcard system's end-to-end workflow, which features plug-and-play electronics, a block-based programming application with a live simulation tool, and a multi-user AR IoT environment to control physical devices with an AR IoT interactions. A solution for children to create dynamic AR IoT environments through block programming, and a series of recommendations based on our study results to inform further work on interactive and creative play through physical computing and augmented reality. Lastly, I want to briefly present my final thoughts on the future of this research area, as well as for the Maker project overall. So as a reminder, these are the research questions that I posed for my dissertation. Overall, we found that the system needed to be open-ended, enabling children to explore options to customize their creations and iterate on them if they desire. Plug-and-play electronics can help younger users use the system and remove many experiential and safety barriers for them. The system should effectively engage users through the design, build, and play phases of its use. And finally, allowing users to author their AR IoT interactions in the block programming interface is crucial to the impact of the system on the users. Users throughout the 4 phases of my research completed exercise in storytelling, mechatronics, mini golf, racing, and a few more activities that were not covered in this presentation. Each had their pros and cons, but overall, AR IoT systems can help merge the physical and virtual realities in new and exciting ways. The Maker Project yields a very interesting position in the area of physical computing. Participants showed signs of learning with the system, even in the brief 2 to 3 hour periods that they had with the technology. Although we did not prove learning occurred with the metrics that we employed in our studies, we did show that participants' experiences were enhanced with psychological responses to the studies, which is a basis for a strategy called gamification. Now for some brief future direction. We envision future research for this system to include more chassis designs, as well as a connection system as described in our 4th recommendation. Pictured here, we designed a few mock-ups of what our vision may look like in future versions of microcards. In future research, we can test more chassis designs with children without design experiences, but also enable those that do have design experience to fabricate their own devices. So to recap, I contributed the following to this research area in my thesis: a design space for an AR IoT system that enables young users to easily design novel interactions between virtual AR content and electromechanical devices that they fabricate themselves, a plug-and-play electronics kit that features a wide variety of actuators, sensors, and LED modules, a block programming environment with a live programming simulation tool that helps novices easily create complex electromechanical devices, and finally, shared experiences between AR content and IoT devices for multiple users with multiple AR-enabled smartphones. I present to you my thesis, the Maker Project, empowering youth to design, build, and play through interactions with augmented reality, physical prototyping, and the Internet of Things. And here, I present my proposed timeline for publication of my papers. IoT Maker will be revised and submitted to the Journal on Child-Computer Interaction. Shared IoT will be submitted to CSEW, and microcards are going to be submitted to CHI in September. And so here's a short list of my publications to date, and my planned submissions, as well as my pending patent on the technology for my research. And lastly, I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of the various agencies, organizations, and corporations that have impacted my experience here at Purdue. It is a blessing to say that my PhD has been fully funded between the National GEM Consortium, the National Science Foundation, and the George Washington Carver Fellowship Program. I've taken part in numerous competitions. I've also taught in and led our lab's Jerry workshops, as well as our virtual summer workshops for the Minority Engineering Program at Purdue. And I also wanted to thank Intel for inviting me to complete an internship there during the summer of 2016. And before I conclude, I do want to say that I saw a lot of my friends and family, even my high school principal and some of my teachers from high school. I really appreciate you all for coming and watching me present my dissertation work. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thanks, Terrell, for your nice presentation. So now we will have a open session where any of the lab members or others can ask Terrell questions, and then we'll have the committee meet with Terrell, where everyone will leave. Thanks.
Right on time.
Great.
Hi, Darrell. Congratulations on such amazing research. I really, you know how much I love your research. I think it's so creative and well thought out, and it's really fantastic seeing it all come together. So I just have a question for you, because I think it's, with all the toolkits you presented, are you planning on commercializing your technology?
So yeah, originally my plan was to do so. I think that in the future, I definitely do want to look into commercializing it, maybe in a few years down the line.
Great, thank you. Really great work.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, Terrell.
Hey, Sub.
Yeah, really great presentation. So I wanted to ask you a question on why did you choose the specific age range for your participants? I mean, why did you focus specifically on youth for targeting your technology, or was there any specific reason? How did you come to that?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So I've always had a passion for engaging with youth. When I was an undergrad, I did a few science exploration and innovation workshops at local communities in the local schools in the Atlanta community. Um, Even when I came here to Indiana, a lot of my service that I do is geared towards the youth. And so um, impacting youth has always been a part of like my personal philosophy, and especially to pursue careers in STEM. So that's kind of where it came from. Now, when you talk about the specific age groups, so originally, like I said, we were kind of targeting that 14 to 18 age range, year old age range, which was initially what we wanted to do. And the reason for that was just because, this prior work with using complex systems like this, we just thought that that would be best to try to stick with that age group and then maybe go down as we kind of went. But like I mentioned in the presentation, there were a lot of people that as we were doing our studies and stuff, they came up to us and said, hey, I have a 12-year-old, I have an 11-year-old that we want to have participate in the study. Can they do it? And we initially we decided that, yeah, like, okay, like we may not get any useful data from that, so we may just let them do it and see what happens. But we actually found that the in some cases the younger students actually did much better than the older kids, because I mean I just think it's because they were just more excited about the technology. Older kids tend to not be so excitable. High schoolers kind of try to play cool and not think that everything is as cool as they actually think it is.
So a quick follow-up. Do you think the technology that you have developed would also be portable for engaging adults, or do you think any sort of modification has to be done to make it more engageable for adults as well? What are your thoughts on transferring this technology from youth to a much larger domain?
Yeah. So I think personally that there are a lot of adults that use microbit, that use Arduino, and a lot of other physical computing platforms, and I don't see this as any different than those. So in that way, I don't know that there's much work that needs to be done to make it usable or to make it relevant for older people. But what I will say is that what we can develop further are the use cases, right? Because again, we kind of we stuck to like the storytelling at first, and then we stuck with the cars, and so like just expanding to outside of those and making it more accessible. And one of the other things that we want to do is make it open source as well. So then people with design experience but no programming experience or whatever will be able to make their own devices, but then program them easily with IoT Maker. So making it open source is also a part of that vision.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Thanks, Sub. We have a question from a visitor.
Mhm.
Can you go ahead, please?
Hi. Well, Terrell, great job. Thank you for sharing your research. I'm sorry if you said this already because I missed the first part of your talk, but I'm wondering where you're going next and what your role is going to be at your next job.
Well, yeah, I was extended an offer by Microsoft to be a hardware engineer there. So after graduation, that is where I plan to be in Seattle, Washington. at Microsoft. So
Are you going to be working on specific projects already assigned to you? Do you know yet?
because I'm not an employee there, they can't tell me any internal information. But what I do know is that I'll be working on the hardware side of the Microsoft's Azure platform, which for those who don't know is their cloud computing platform. And so what they'll be doing there, what I'll be doing there is helping clients both internally at Microsoft and external clients at other companies move their workloads to the cloud. So, and I'll be consulting with those clients to help them do that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Other questions, please? Yeah, the committee, if you want, you can ask your open questions, and then we will have the audience take off, and then we will have a closed session with Carol. Any open questions are all welcome now. Okay, it looks like in spite of a large audience, nobody wants to ask questions. So
I was muted.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, Terrell, you're really an inspiration. It's amazing to see what you've accomplished. To say that your work is creative might be sort of misleading if somebody just says, "Oh, it involves kids." Of course, it's creative. I mean, it's creative because what you've done is just really, out of the box and sort of unexpected, and I love it. So in a sense, I'm a terrible committee member here because I'm biased. I like your work. I've been following it. But I had a couple questions. So one is kind of an easy one, or maybe an easy one, and one is a little bit harder one. The easier one is this. Story, it seems like everything kind of grew out of StoryMaker, but I also know that when you have an idea, especially something that is kind of, unexpected like that, it probably started in one place and ended in another place. How did your aims of that project or your vision for that project change from when you first started thinking about it to when you actually got a paper out?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So my initial thoughts about it were, so my first semester here in 2016, fall 2016, I was sitting in a meeting with Dr. Ramani and some other students from the lab at the time, and I jotted down, it was this first note that I took in this book that my mother had got me, a notebook to take notes in from our research. And it was the very first note that I wrote down. And it was it was something along the lines of using Legos to and using Legos and computer vision to help augmented reality, help kids play with augmented reality stuff. It was something along those lines. So that's kind of where it started. And then as I began iterating on that, that was actually the basis of what my NSF proposal was when I applied for that fellowship. Over time, the way that it evolved, I wish I could say that we had come up with like new ideas and we implemented these, but honestly, a lot of the changes and stuff that we made with the development of StoryMaker specifically was because we're like, oh, we can't do that. Okay, well, let's figure out how we can do it and let's move on to something different. So originally, yeah, we had computer vision planned. We had I mean, it was just a lot of different things that we wanted to implement that we didn't necessarily get the opportunity to. Another thing that we wanted to implement was to allow people to be able to design their own characters instead of using the ones that we had. You saw the dragon and the barbarian and some of those other skeletons, some of those other characters and stuff. So those are just things that we just ran into technical roadblocks.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was interested in. Like, where did you have to cut? I mean, usually an idea like that usually starts off really big, and then you have to cut it down. Like, what did you have to cut?
Yeah. So it definitely the computer vision aspect of it, and that was just because of we had a initial, so we didn't have the Unity package that we wanted to use. It didn't work well, and we just kind of decided to scrap it and come back to it. But then after we did all of our studies and everything, we actually realized that we didn't necessarily need computer vision in order to do it. And also a large part of that as well, obviously, is machine learning, right? You'll have to, if someone fabricates, I mean, I can share my screen again. Or is it already still being shared? I want to go to, yeah. So, if someone said that this was a plane, we'd have to have a really, really large number of devices that kind of look like this, that are made with all the different materials and stuff that we had, in order to create, the training that we needed for a machine learning algorithm like that. And time constraints, resources, those type of things are why we didn't go with that. And then sense. The making their own characters and stuff, that was more of a technical issue, or I guess more of a, not technical, but more of like a experience issue. We didn't have enough experience working with 3D models, even designing our own 3D models to be able to make that happen. And so that's kind of what happened there.
I mean, this is good. I mean, I think that's an important part of the story that, certainly for, at the very least for students who are, listening, is just important to understand. I think I may have two more, and I don't think I'll have any private questions for you, but I think my questions are probably fair enough to do publicly. You can punt if you want. The testimonials that you have. So, I mean, first of all, I mean, I think it was very good and appropriate and kind of nice to see you had, you use qualitative research, and it sounded like a good process that you did with sort of the iterative process for defining the codes, and then the separate coding by the team members. How do you derive the validity of qualitative data research results? Like, how do you know that, like, could you say that if you had a different, handful of people, would they have come to the same or equivalent conclusions as you and your partners did?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you. So personally, I believe that, I think the answer to your question is both yes and no. So let me explain why I say both. So for yes, I do think that some people will come to the same conclusion, given a different set of users. And the reason I say yes, they come to the same conclusion, is because a lot of the students liked doing something different, something new, and that they have never done before, or something that is just different than what they do in school. So I think that a lot of that is like, I'm excited to play with cars, right? Or I'm excited to, be able to do some electronics. And I think that starting there and kind of like having them go through the process really helped them understand what was happening. Now, the reason I say no, I don't think that some students would have come to the same conclusion, is because different students have different varying degrees of expertise with electronics, with programming. And so one of the things, and actually I'll kind of use this image as a way to explain this, but it also depends on what happens during the study. So I want to point out these scores right here. Obviously, these scores are for our system usability scale for shared IoT.
Yeah.
Now, what happened during Miranda, Bill, and Nate's, and these are pseudonyms, by the way, but what happened during that study was that because this technology is a prototype, it is not fully functional. I mean, excuse me, it is fully functional, but it bugs sometimes. There are clearly bugs, and with any technology that's not been piloted. I mean, even with our cell phones, right? So, but anyway, during this particular study, we were having Wi-Fi issues. One of the maker boards decided to it got fried somehow during one of the other studies. We kept having to switch out maker boards, and then we also were having issues uploading code to the maker board. So I ended up having to take their code, put it on the flash drive, run over to my computer in the lab, compile it, put it on, and then run all the way back so that they can use it. So just that study in particular, it just took so long. And so I say that to say that it really just depends on like how refined the technology is and you know what their experience is during the user study. So
I mean, just to be clear,
I think,
I just meant like if a different group of people looked at the same, I can't remember, it was videos that you were analyzing.
it
But
was
you know, if a different
interview transcripts.
yeah, so if a different group of people were looking at the exact same transcripts, but I mean, I think you more or less got to that at the beginning. And I think one more along the same lines is when you look at sort of the testimonials. So did the people giving the testimonials, did they know that you were the creator?
Yeah. So we in the beginning, we told them, so even on the flyer, we asked them to test technology that we developed. And in the study, in the after they completed the pre-study survey, we took them through a tutorial of the system, and we notified them that it wasn't commercial and that we were the creators of the technology. So.
Okay, yeah. How do you sort of interpret testimonials? Like, you know, people are going to have somewhat of a bias to say nice things. On the other hand, like, I mean, I think they had good reason to say nice things just from looking at other aspects of this. How do you sort of mediate the bias that people might have? You know, since they know that, you know, since you're the researcher.
Yeah, that's a good question. So a large part of that is so these people don't. Most of our users didn't know us. So that was one aspect of it. And then I tend to believe that although, yes, there may be some bias there, I think that what happens is we have to look at the qualitative data through the lens of our frameworks that we're using. So in our case, you know, we kind of use constructionism, which is this theory that, you know, you're able to build mental models of knowledge by putting your hands on information. So I think that in doing so, we have to be careful to not only extract all of the good things out of it based on the theories that we're using, but also note and extract some of the negatives that come from that, because not everybody gave good or positive feedback.
Normally, I would be asking you things like what are the limitations, and I think you did a great job of, you know, going through the limitations, and that's, I mean, I think that's another way of sort of, you know, balancing out with really positive testimonials. But also, you know, normally I'd be asking you sort of, you know, where are things going, but you covered that, or, you know, clarify your research questions, but you did a pretty good job of that. So I think, so sorry if I'm overtaking my time here, but, you know, hats off to you, Terrell. It's really very, very professional, like a real standout.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So Tahira and Nielsen, do you have any open questions?
I don't have any.
Great. Well, Nielsen, do you have any questions?
No,
okay.
Not
all right. Yeah, so Nielsen is aware of your work in greater detail. So thanks to all. So now we'll just